we have another one coming up, birthright citizenship. It would be a disgrace if the Supreme Court of the United States allows that to happen. 20 to 25% of the people coming into our country will come in through birthright citizenship. They'll become citizens through birthright citizenship, and it'll cost us numbers that are, I don't even think they're doable. And I hope they do what's right. Birthright citizenship is a disgrace. The cost of birthright citizenship is barely not affordable by our country. It's going to cost hundreds of billions of dollars, and it's in their hands. What can I tell you? It's a common sense ruling. It's common sense. It was exact timing, and it's about the babies of slaves.
Yeah, folks, welcome back to my YouTube channel, and if you're watching me for the first time, please consider subscribing, like, and share my videos. So, folks, the United States Supreme Court has delivered one of the biggest constitutional rulings for years, and it's a major setback for none other than President Donald Trump. Folks, in a 6-3 decision, the court ruled that birthright citizenship remains protected under the 14th Amendment, rejecting Donald Trump's attempt to end it through executive order. The decision is already sending shockwaves through American politics, immigration debates, and the road to the next general elections. So, folks, I won't say much. Let's dive into the videos, and I will talk much after the videos, and I'll give my commentary. So, folks, please don't forget to subscribe, like, and share my videos.
Let me make one thing real clear. This ain't about injunctions. This is about erasing the 14th Amendment with a smile. We thought the courts were supposed to be the last line of defense, the place where liberty stands tall even when presidents go rogue. But on Friday, in a 6-3 decision straight down party lines, the Supreme Court told us, nah, we good. They let Trump sneak his foot in the door to cancel birthright citizenship. And they dressed it up in legal jargon about equity and injunctions. Oh, but don't get distracted. The real target was always your rights, especially if you was born with brown skin, immigrant parents, or ancestors who came here in chains rather than visas. For a second, it looked like the lower courts might hold the line, right? 3 federal judges had already slapped Trump's executive orders down with nationwide injunctions, telling him loud and clear, you can't just rewrite the Constitution because you feel like it. Immigrant groups were celebrating. 22 states stood up in court. Even the appellate courts said, let this play out. Then SCOTUS slid in like a repo man in the night. Instead of ruling on whether Trump's executive order was flat out unconstitutional, which it was, they sidestepped it and went for the technical foul. Universal injunctions go too far. God damn it. Basically, the court said that judges can't stop Trump's policies for everyone. Only the people who specifically sued. So now we're playing legal whack-a-mole across 50 states while Trump rushes to implement a policy that directly contradicts 150 years of law. So what's at stake, right? Everything. Let me break this down plain and simple. Trump's executive order says, if your parents weren't here legally, or maybe they were here legally, but temporarily, you don't deserve citizenship. Are you serious? The 14th Amendment that was passed after the Civil War to make sure that black folks were considered full human beings says, all persons born or naturalized in the United States are citizens. It don't say except for immigrants. It don't say only if your parents had papers. It says all persons. A phrase so fucking inclusive. It slapped the face of Dred Scott and every slave master of the fucking Confederacy. So what Trump is really doing here is rewriting Reconstruction. The very laws meant to undo slavery. And the Supreme Court just handed him the pen. You thought Isengard was bad? You thought Voldemort was a problem? Justice Amy Coney Barrett, Trump's handpicked avatar, penned this majority opinion like it was a legal lullaby. With principles of equity, she says, while politely gutting the power of federal courts to stop executive tyranny. And while they didn't officially cancel birthright citizenship yet, make no mistake, they laid the legal groundwork to allow Trump to do it himself. In the dissent, Justice Sonia Sotomayor, she tried to hold the line, calling out how this decision disregards the long history of protection for non-parties. But her voice is now a lonely alarm in a house full of arsonists. This ain't about immigration. This is about control. It's about telling people of color, especially black, brown, or immigrant babies, that their existence is conditional. That if you ain't got the generational wealth, land deeds, or ancestors off the Mayflower, you're permanently under review. Today is birthright citizenship. Tomorrow is voting rights. Affirmative action, gone. Housing, gone. Education, you got it, gone. When does it stop? In the MAGA cult, are they going to keep smiling in your face, talking about this is what we voted for. This is what the founders wanted. Don't forget, y'all, the founders owned slaves. They're not playing. Trump told you on day one what he was coming for. And this court just gave him the green light to drive through your rights like a bulldozer in a graveyard. So don't wait on the Constitution to bleed before you speak up. Because if birthright citizenship can be reviewed, so can your freedom.
You're born in the U.S. to people who aren't citizens. Are you a citizen just from being born here? Today, the Supreme Court said yes. President Trump had ended automatic citizenship for babies born in the United States when their parents are illegal or tourists without citizenship. The highest court blocked him from doing that. They said the Constitution makes babies born here citizens automatically. So a baby is born in America. The question is, does that baby become an American citizen the second they're born here? The Constitution has one sentence that leads to this whole debate. All persons born or naturalized in the United States and subject to the jurisdiction thereof are citizens of the United States. That sentence has two parts. Satisfy both, you're a citizen. Part one, were you born here? It's an easy question. Born in a hospital in Chicago, Detroit, Pittsburgh, you can check box number one. But the second, trickier part, you must also be subject to the jurisdiction of the United States. What does that mean? The majority of judges said subject to the jurisdiction means just that the United States has legal power over you. Jurisdiction often means a court or government's power over another person. And if you're on our soil, they already have power over you and you qualify. For example, if a visitor from another country gets a speeding ticket in Illinois, they cannot say, I'm not American, you have no power over me, I don't have to pay the ticket. They do, they can make you pay. American law still applies. That person is under the American jurisdiction. And so any baby born here is, from moment number one, under the jurisdiction of the U.S., and they're a citizen. The Trump administration had said subject to the jurisdiction means more. It means something more like full political allegiance. They said if your parents are citizens with full allegiance, then you can be a citizen because you're born to those with allegiance to the country. So if the parents are citizens of another country or only here temporarily, the baby should not automatically get citizenship, they said, because they aren't under the power of the U.S. or the jurisdiction of the U.S. This reading did not win the day. So under this view, babies born here to undocumented parents or even tourists satisfy both parts, born in the U.S. and subject to its jurisdiction or power, citizens at birth. Thank you for your attention to this matter.
Birthright citizenship and the 14th Amendment have been upheld by the Supreme Court. This is breaking out of Washington, where Chief Justice Roberts read the following decision. In a massive blow to Donald Trump and Republicans, the Chief Justice wrote in his opinion, children born in the United States to parents unlawfully or temporarily in the United States are subject to the jurisdiction of the United States and therefore are citizens at birth under the 14th Amendment. They decided this on the constitutionality and language of the 14th Amendment itself. They didn't decide it on anything else. So Trump's executive order has been struck down. This was a 6-3 decision. So two of the conservative justices sided with the court's liberals, upholding the constitutionality and language of the 14th Amendment. Again, this is a massive blow to Donald Trump and the right wing in the United States right now. And I do expect there to be a massive response and outcry from them, which I will bring that to you later once the ketchup stops flying at the White House.
Birthright citizenship is saved, but my question is, why was it ever in danger in the first place? Today, in a 6-3 decision, the United States Supreme Court upheld birthright citizenship, or the 14th Amendment, rejecting Donald Trump's executive order that said children born to people in the United States who are here illegally or temporarily are not United States citizens. And in order to understand the gravity of this, you have to understand the 14th Amendment. It's 1868, slavery is over, and there's the question of the citizenship of the formerly enslaved Black American. And so we get the 14th Amendment, the amendment that says that you are a citizen of the United States irrespective of your race, ethnicity, or national origin of parents. And even the potential overturning of this amendment is something that we cannot stand for. But there's two things that we should be on alert about. The fact that this court case even existed in the first place, and the fact that it was a 6-3 ruling and not 9-0. 3 conservative justices ruled in Trump's favor: Clarence Thomas, Samuel Alito, and Neil Gorsuch. Pay attention.
4 Supreme Court justices. These 4 nitwits here just voted against what it actually says in the Constitution. 4 of them. And while everyone is celebrating that Trump's birthright citizenship order was reversed, think of how crazy that is. I'm going to read you the first sentence of the 14th Amendment. All persons born or naturalized in the United States and subject to the jurisdiction thereof are citizens of the United States and the state wherein they reside. Do they not know what the word all means? Do they not know what the word born means? And yet, these 4 went against what it actually says in the Constitution. Now, mind you, we can debate the merits of birthright citizenship. I'm in favor of it. Other people are against it. In Europe, they don't have it. We can debate those merits. But what it says in the Constitution is pretty clear, and you can't pretend to be in favor of the Constitution and pick and choose as you'd like. I have issues with the Constitution. I've made those issues clear. I think we need to replace the Constitution with something better. It has a lot of problems. It always has. It's what's leading us to this unfair representation and these gerrymandering problems we're having right now. But if you're there to interpret the Constitution and you can't interpret this sentence correctly, you shouldn't be there.
All right, y'all, we got to talk about the Supreme Court today. If you didn't hear the good news already, they voted to uphold birthright citizenship, which is the concept that even if you are born to parents who are in the U.S. illegally, if you are born on U.S. soil, you are in fact a citizen. That has been upheld. I wanted to take a moment to tear into these 3 motherfuckers, Justice Clarence Thomas, Justice Alito, Justice Gorsuch, who voted against this provision, because they basically said, fuck the Constitution. If you are president, you can write an executive order overriding the Constitution. To me, that is what their ruling said, because Donald Trump's executive order banning birthright citizenship was blatantly unconstitutional. And now I see these three right here are willing to go against the Constitution if it means satisfying Donald Trump. And then we need to take a moment for Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson, because obviously she voted with the majority to uphold birthright citizenship, but she also took a moment to write a dissent particularly aimed at Justice Clarence Thomas and other parts of the people who dissented that she did not agree with. And y'all, she chewed Clarence up, okay? And in this opinion that she wrote, she basically called out Clarence Thomas's hypocrisy. She's like, you stay saying that the Constitution is colorblind, and now you're trying to call this particular amendment in the 14th Amendment as a race-conscious remedial measure. But she's like, what happened to you saying that the Constitution is colorblind? Why are you trying to argue against that now? Clarence has been very butthurt about this ruling. He wrote a 90-page dissent, and he is trying to say that this amendment was designed to secure equal rights for freed Black, but has now been twisted into this thing that's just giving citizenship to whoever the fuck wants to be an American. Essentially, I'm translating it for y'all. All right, and the last Supreme Court thing I wanted to touch on that actually doesn't have to do with this ruling, NPR published an article saying that Justice Alito is retiring, and then they quickly retracted the story. Look, I do not have time for Donald Trump to make another appointment to the Supreme Court. I do not have time for that. America does not have time for that. No one should be retiring right now. I understand that they retracted it, but the fact that this was even published, that was even a thing, and there have been rumors about Alito, y'all, we just gotta pray. Because Donald Trump simply cannot appoint another motherfucker to the Supreme Court.
Is every baby born in the United States an automatic citizen of the United States? That was the question in front of the Supreme Court today. And the answer is, for more than 150 years, yeah, Under the 14th Amendment of the Constitution, it says all persons born or naturalized in the United States and subject to the jurisdiction thereof are citizens of the United States and of the state wherein they reside. On top of that, the Supreme Court ruled in the 1800s that, yep, all babies born in the United States are citizens of the United States. And Congress has passed 2 separate laws saying the exact same thing. But President Trump is now arguing that people who are in this country illegally or are in this country legally but only temporarily are not subject to the jurisdiction of the United States because they are domiciled in or their allegiance is to another country. Well, domicile was definitely the word of the day during today's 2 hours of oral arguments. Even this conservative supermajority who likes to look at the Constitution based on what was happening at the time it was written had a really hard time squaring that domicile circle. And I'm going to get to the wonky domicile argument in a second because you need to understand it. But first, I want to talk about the political argument the Trump administration is trying to make and how it landed with the justices. Now, one of the reasons the Trump administration is using to justify taking away birthright citizenship is because of what they see as a huge problem, which is, of course, not only the fact that illegal immigrants are coming to this country and having babies, but also because of this new industry of birth tourism. They see it as a real problem, meaning pregnant foreigners come to the United States on purpose so they can take advantage of the 14th Amendment and give birth to their baby on U.S. soil so their baby has U.S. citizenship. Now, even the Chief Justice was like, so?
Based on Chinese media reports, there are 500 birth tourism companies in the People's Republic of China whose business is to bring people here to give birth and return to that nation.
Having said all that, you do agree that that has no impact on the legal analysis before us?
I think it's, I'd quote what Justice Scalia said in his Hamdan dissent, where their interpretation has these implications that could not possibly have been approved by the 19th century framers of this amendment. I think that shows that they've made a mess. Their interpretation has made a mess of the provision.
Well, it certainly wasn't a problem in the 19th century.
No, but of course, we're in a new world now, as Justice Alito pointed out, where 8 billion people are one plane ride away from having a child who's a U.S. citizen.
Well, it's a new world. It's the same Constitution.
Now, let's talk about this wonky domicile argument. Just hang in here with me. To understand that, you have to understand the Trump administration's argument, which is to have U.S. citizenship, they believe parents of that baby must have established domicile in the United States. What's that? Well, the legal definition of domicile says a person can claim domicile in a country if that person treats that country as their permanent home or the person lives in or has a substantial connection to that country. During today's oral arguments in front of the justices and even in front of President Trump himself, who was the very first sitting U.S. president to be present for an oral argument, this idea of domicile was brought up more times than I can count. But even with the president sitting there, the domicile argument fell a little flat, not just with the liberal justices, but also with the conservative ones.
Do we look at how domicile was understood in 1868? Or do we look at it how it's understood today?
The 1868 understanding, I'm not aware of a strong difference between those.
Well, so Congress could continually restrict who may lawfully be present more and more, and you'd say that would be incorporated into it, even though you're telling us to apply the original meaning of 1868.
The original meaning of domicile.
Whose domicile matters? I mean, it's not the child, obviously. It's the parents you'd have us focus on. And, what if, is it the husband? Is it the wife? What if they're unmarried? Whose domicile?
Well, in the executive order, it draws a distinction between the mother and the father. It's really the mother's domicile. I think that would matter.
Well, but 1868 matters, you're telling us. So what's the answer? And how are we going to determine domicile? I mean, would we use contemporary sources on what qualifies as domicile in a state, or do we look in 1868? And do we have to do this for every single person?
Reside means domicile in the Constitution, and we think that strongly supports our interpretation. It's textual evidence of our domicile-based theory of jurisdiction.
Well, starting with that theory, you obviously put a lot of weight on subject to the jurisdiction thereof. But the examples you give to support that strike me as very quirky. Children of ambassadors, children of enemies during a hostile invasion, children on warships. And then you expand it to a whole class of illegal aliens are here in the country. I'm not quite sure how you can get to that big group from such tiny and sort of idiosyncratic examples.
Where does this principle come from? Allegiance, domicile, allegiance, I think you point to a Lincoln funeral speech. If you're subject to jurisdiction, you're subject to the authority of. One doesn't say, oh, what that means is a certain kind of allegiance that domiciliaries have and nobody else does. So the text of the clause, I think, does not support you. I think you're sort of looking for some more technical, esoteric meaning. And then the question comes, okay, if the text doesn't support you, if there's a real history of people using it that way, but as far as I can tell, at the time of the 14th, you're using some pretty obscure sources to get to this.
Both conservative and liberal justices suggested that if they sided with the Trump administration and overturned the way we all understand the 14th Amendment, and not all babies born here are automatic citizens, it would cause chaos, and we'd have all these babies born in this country with no home, and how would you decide who's domiciled and who is not? And really, there was no answer to those questions during the arguments today. Now, to be fair, there were some tough questions for the challengers of the Trump administration who said that this argument of domicile and subject to the jurisdiction thereof is absolutely ridiculous. They argued that the Constitution, the Supreme Court, and the Congress has clearly said for more than 150 years that these babies are American citizens. And the Trump administration, they say, is grasping at straws. Now, as always, there's no way to know exactly how the justices will rule in the end, but we'll know for sure at the end of their term, probably around late June.